Hello folks, welcome to another part in this zombie shooter training course in Unreal Engine. Today we're going to take a look at setting up our HUD element for our weapon. We're going to generate a weapon card. Our weapon card is going to contain information like our weapon level and the little XP for the weapon, and also it's going to have our current mag count, our ammo remaining, and also the base damage that the weapon can do as well. So it's going to be a pretty fun one, very interesting. We're going to use a lot of interfaces and we're going to go back and update our weapon stat managers for this. So I really hope that you like it. If you do, a like and subscribe would really go a very long way. It's free to do so. So thank you very much for stopping by. Let's go and take a look at how to get this done. For the purpose of setting up our weapon information in our HUD, I have generated these two images, one with an AR and the other one with the pistol, and I have made an empty template. Now I will upload this template to Patreon for all of my viewers to download for free. And I have taken this template and then I took it to PowerPoint and I added this text for the level of the weapon, the magazine count, and the ammo remaining, and also the damage that the weapon can do. And then here I am intending to add in a progress bar to show the weapon XP level. Same thing for the pistol. I just moved the exact elements around, but it's the exact same information that's going to be part of the pistol as well. Now, the idea that I have is that each weapon in the game should have its own unique card, just to add that unique factor to it, and the card will be displayed on the screen when the weapon is equipped. Let's go ahead and take a look at how to do that. First, let's create the UI. So we're going to go to our content drawer, go to Core, Weapon System, Weapon Stats, and then we're going to create a new folder, and this would be named as UI. Inside of here, we're going to go ahead and create a new user interface, widget blueprint, user widget. Let's name this W_AR4_card. Open this up, add in a size box, and we're going to make this size box 200 by 125. We can make this bigger if we need to later on when we add it to our screen. Now I'm going to go ahead and set this to desired on screen. Let's go ahead and add an image to the size box. We're going to select this image and then set the image to the rifle template image. And now we just need to add in our elements. So I'm going to right click on the size box and then wrap it with an overlay. And then now I can go ahead and search for a text box and then drag and drop it onto the overlay. I'm going to get the text box just like so. I'm going to rename this to the level_txt and then make this a variable. Now this text block is going to state the weapon's level. So I'm going to set this to 999 as the default text. And the color, I'm just going to set it to like a bright red so you can see it on the screen. And then, you can change it to black or whichever color. For now, I'm going to set this to red. I'm going to press OK. And then I'm going to play with this padding setting to get this to fit inside the box. First, the alignment, I can easily set this to the right alignment. So it's much more closer to the box. And the top padding, I'll set to like about 60. Or that's too much. There we go. And then now I can reduce the size of the text to something like 10 or maybe even 9 and start playing with this padding. That looks pretty good. So now I can go ahead and copy and paste this level text and then rename this to our mag_txt. And again, make sure this is a variable. And then now we're going to go ahead and move it. So first I'm going to move it to the bottom on the vertical alignment. And then now start playing with the padding until I get it to where I need it to be. That looks good. Now let's go ahead and copy and paste the mag text again and then make this into the AREM_text. AREM is basically ammo remaining. This is how much ammo you have in your backpack to reload out of. And then let's move the padding around. All right. And let's copy and paste this one last time for the damage. So I'm going to name this DMG_TXT damage text. There we go. And the last thing that we're going to add is a progress bar. And this is for our weapon XP. And this progress bar, I'm going to fit it right above this weapon XP right here. In the right side where you have the marquee image, right below it, you have the image size. You can actually play with this to increase and reduce the progress bar height or the length. So I'm going to play with this here until I fit it right inside that little bar. I'll compile this, and I'm not really a fan of this gray background. So I'm going to open up my sample image, and I'm going to take a screenshot of that little spot where the progress bar is going to sit. And I'm going to make this as my background. And then you can import it into Unreal Engine. I've already done that. I'm going to select the progress bar first and make sure this background image is open. and then you can go ahead and drag it and drop it in there. And now you'll see it just like this. Let's make sure that the draw as is set to an image so it fits perfectly where it's supposed to be. And now if I scroll down a little bit where I have the progress bar percent, if I increase it, you'll see that the progress bar is increasing and it looks like it's within the card itself. It gives it that really good effect. Now, I'm not really a fan of this color, of course, so I'm going to change this blue by clicking on the blue and then clicking on the eyedropper, and I'm going to pick a color from this blood icon that I have on the top here. So this card looks really good. Let's go ahead and work on the functionality of this card. So first, I'm going to go to the graph. Off of event pre-construct, I'm going to drag and say get data table row. And because we know this is going to be specific for the AR, I'm going to select the weapon data table here, and I'm going to make sure that this is set to Assaulto 1, which is basically our AR4. And then off of out row, I'm going to drag it and then break the weapons info. And then off of name, I'm going to drag it and promote it to a variable. And this is going to be our weapon name. So I'm just going to rename it just like that. And I can select this, and then I can hide all the unconnected pins here. Compile and save it. Now back in our designer, we're going to go ahead and bind all of these functionalities using interface functions. We're going to first start with our level, select the level number here and the text, set this to bind, and then create a binding. And then now here, we need to go and retrieve the weapon level information from Weapon Stat Manager component. So first we need to get our player character. And here we're going to go ahead and get component by class. This is basically the component that is attached to our player character, which is our Weapon Stat Manager. And off of this, we're going to call in an interface function. So let's go ahead and go to our content drawer, core, interfaces, and then open up our BPI UI interface. And we're going to add in a new function, and this would be get underscore weapon stat. The input is going to have a name, or I guess we can name this as the weapon name. Set this to type name. And the second input is going to have our stat, the stat that we're looking for. And this would be E underscore weapon stats. Now, once we get the stat information, we need to output that information. We need to bring it over to our UI. So we're going to go ahead and add in an output, and this would be our stat value. And set this to a float. Compile and save. Now let's go ahead and implement this function in our component. So we're going to go to our content drawer, our core folder, weapon system, weapon stats, and open up our BPC weapon stat manager. Go to class settings, and then add in the interface, BPI underscore UI interface. And then here under interfaces, we should have the get weapon stat interface function. If I double click on it, I should get this function node. Now here, it's very simple. We're just going to go to our stats, our utility stat named get single stat value. And here we're going to plug in the weapon name and also the stat. And the output of this, we're going to go ahead and plug it in here. And that's all you have to do to get the information from our weapon stat manager for a single stat. Back in our AR4 card, off of this component class return value, we're going to get weapon stat, and that's going to be our message. Plug the execution pin here. And the stat value is going to be connected to our return, just like this. And we need the weapon name, so we're going to drag in our weapon name variable, plug it in here, and the stat is going to be our weapon level. That's all we need to do for our weapon level. Now next in our designer, let's do our progress bar. So for our progress bar, we need to get our XP information. So scroll down to where you have the percent, click on this binding, and then create a binding. And this progress bar is going to have very similar functionality to this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this information and then go ahead and paste it here. And now here we need 3 stat information from our weapon stat manager. So first one that we need is our current XP. And the second one we need, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this 2 more times. And second one is going to be XP to level up. And the third one that we need is total XP. Connect the weapon name to all of this and the target from our component class here. And the execution from get percent, we're going to go to the first one, and then to the second one, and then the third one. And then after that, we're going to connect it to our return node. We're going to get our current XP and do a division. And then we need to divide it by something, which is basically our XP to level up minus our total XP. And this is going to be connected to our current XP. And now this is going to give us our progress bar. Compile and save this. Make sure all of your connections are connected in properly and all of your stat values are set up properly. And then we're good to go with our percentage. So compile and save, and we are done with the percentage as well. All right, next we have is our mag count. For our mag count, we're going to get it directly from our weapon base, where when we are firing the weapon, we're already reducing our ammo count. So we're going to get that information directly from there. First, let's go to our BPI UI and add in a new function for that. The function would be get mag count. Now this input requires a name and also the mag count. The mag count is going to be of a type integer. So now let's go ahead and implement this mag count in our weapon base. So in our content drawer core folder, let's go to weapon system, blueprints, open up our weapon base. Now we can simply set up our interface function inside of the ammo check, but because we want to use the exact same function for reload and also the fire weapon, one before we fire the weapon and one after we reload the weapon, we're going to create a new function to take care of this. So create a new function, and this would be our notify underscore mag size. Here we're going to input a name. This would be our weapon name, and then also the mag size integer. Now we're going to go ahead and get our player character. From our player character, we're going to get component by class, and this would be our weapon stat manager. And we're going to go ahead and call in the mag size or get mag count message. Let's plug all of these execution, the name, and also the mag size here. Compile and save. And now in our ammo check, just before we fire the weapon, we want to notify of our mag size. Our mag size here is basically our magazine size subtracting our ammo used. And that's going to be our magazine size here for our fire weapon. And the name, we can just get our S weapons info here and then just add in the name and then plug it in here directly. And after we reload the weapon, we also want to notify of our magazine size here. And I'm going to just copy this weapon info and break. And I'm going to plug this in here directly. And the magazine size is going to be this right here. So once the reload is complete, on our UI, the magazine is going to show that for AR is 31 bullets. It's going to show that 31 bullets here. And that's all we're going to do with our weapon base. Now let's go to our weapon stat manager to take care of the other stuff. So in our weapon stat manager, the first thing that we want to do is we want to open up our register weapon to manager. And here, when we are making our basic statistics for our weapon, we don't want to set our magazine size to 0 because our magazine size has a default value. So under this break S weapons info, we can go ahead and select our magazine size and then just plug this in here directly here. When we register the weapon to our stat manager here, it's going to register our default magazine size here. Now, normally when you add in a new variable in your weapon stats, I would use the update single stat here to go ahead and do the update functionality. But because the magazine works a little different, because we're not really subtracting like we normally do here or adding things to it, we're going to set the value that is coming directly from our weapons info. We're going to create a new function for this. So here we're going to go ahead and call in update magazine size. And the update magazine size is going to have a name, which is going to be of type name, and which is basically our weapon name, and then also our mag size. And here we're going to set this to an integer. First, we're going to get the weapon stats and connect the name here. And off of the weapon stats, we're going to go ahead and break it. We're going to go ahead and call in the set weapon stats. And here we're going to make the weapon stats here. Connect the index here, just like so. We're going to connect everything directly as it is. Except for the magazine size, we're going to go ahead and get this mag size. And then plug it in here directly. We're not doing any type of addition or subtraction, and that's why we're not using this update single stat function. We're creating a new function to handle this. Compile and save. Actually, we can add in a branch here as well, just as a fail-safe in case anything goes wrong. Or else this will start throwing errors at you. And then last thing that we need to do is in here is to get our mag count function. So if I double click on it, it's going to add in an event. Once we get the mag count, we're going to go ahead and update the magazine size and connect the mag count and the mag size here, just like so. And now that we have updated our weapon stats, we can go to our AR4 card, select the mag size, and then we're going to create a new binding, which is going to be our get mag size text. We're going to copy all of this, get player character, weapon name, and the weapon stat. And then we're going to paste it here. And the weapon stat that we're going to get here is going to be our mag size. The reason why we don't have it here is because we haven't added it to our enumeration. So back in our content drawer, if I go to my weapon stats enumeration, I just need to add in an enumeration for current mag size. Save it, compile, and then now I should have the current mag size. And let's go ahead and plug that into our return value. And that should get us our mag size. One little function that we need to update is that inside of our weapon stat manager where we have our get single stat value, we just need to drag off of this magazine and then connect it to our current mag size. This is added new because we just added the line item to our enumeration. So we just need to make sure that we update this here. Now the last one that we're going to do is the weapon damage itself. This should be pretty straightforward. We're going to go to our content drawer, open up our weapon stats for our stat manager. Here, we're going to add in a new variable, and this would be our weapon damage. The idea for the weapon damage for me is that I want to show the player how much damage this AR4 is going to do, and this is going to be our base damage to like a body shot. Headshot obviously has a multiplier added to it, and I'm not going to show that information here. But I want to show what is the current weapon damage. Now, the weapon damage is consistent of our base damage plus our damage modifier, which is controlled by our level. Higher the level, the bigger the damage is. But I just want to show the player a raw damage value here. So that's why we're adding in this weapon damage to our weapon statistics. Now in our e-weapon stats, I'm going to go ahead and add in a new weapon damage line enumerator. And then save both of these. In our weapon stat manager, go to register weapon. Here now we have our weapon damage. And if you remember, when we set up our weapons info, we actually added a weapon damage base, our base weapon damage number here. We just need to go ahead and plug this in here. Compile and save it. And now we need to go to our get single stat value. And then here again, we need to just plug this in here to our weapon damage. And we're going to go to our update single stat. And where we have our update single stat, we're going to go ahead and plug all of this in where we have missed it. And the last place that we need to update is our update magazine size. We need to make sure that this damage is passed over. So whenever we get our stats, this proper weapon damage is passed over as well. Now in our AR4, we can select our weapon damage and create a new binding for it. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and use our interface function to get our damage text, connect the return value to our return node here. And the stat that we need to get here is our weapon damage. And then that should get us our weapon damage. Now that we have completed this, let's go and find a spot in our player HUD to add this card. So in our content drawer, go to Core, UI, Player HUD. The simplest way is I'm going to select this player ID card container. I'm going to duplicate it. And then rename this to weapon card underscore container. And then move this out a little bit. It doesn't matter if it overlaps because I think it's a little too big, but we can just click on size to content for now and then go ahead and compile and save it. We're going to add the card in here and then tweak it as we see fit later. Now to create the function to populate this box is to go to content drawer and then we're going to go to our third person blueprints and then open up our blueprint, third person blueprint character. And we're going to create a function to create this weapon card. So create a function here, and we're going to call in create weapon ID card. Now, if my loadout has two weapons, I want to have two cards in my screen. And if the loadout has only one weapon, I'm going to have one card show up. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and get our BPC loadouts and then get loadouts content. And I'm going to go for each loop. Let's go ahead and connect this here. The array element, we're going to go ahead and do a break. And the slot quantity, we need to make sure that the slot quantity is greater than 0. That means the slot is actually filled with something in there. And then do a branch. If it is true, then we're going to go ahead and create a widget. And for the widget, it's easy for us to select the AR4 card, but this is not going to be the only weapon. So we want to pass this AR4 card information into our weapon structure. So for that, we're going to go to our content drawer, core, weapon system, open up your S weapons info. At the very bottom, we're going to add in a new variable, and this would be our weapon card UI. And this would be of type user widget. And make this a class reference. Save it. And then in our weapons data table, select your AR45. And if you go to the very bottom, you should be able to now select your WAR4 card. So this way, each weapon is going to have its own ID card. And back in our third person character, select our loadout struct here, drag off of our weapons info and do a break. And here we only need our weapon card information. So I'm going to select this weapon UI card and connect this to our class here. And now we need to set this. So we're going to get the player HUD reference and then get weapon container. And here we're going to add child to wrapbox and connect the return value to the content here. And because we're going to be attaching weapons and deattaching the weapons back and forth, we're going to go ahead and clear this container every time this function calls in. Drag in our player HUD reference again, and then get our weapon container. And we're going to go ahead and call in the function clear children. So this way, every time we call in this function, it's going to remove everything from this container and it's going to rebuild it. And where we plug this function is basically when we attach anything to our loadout or add anything to our loadout, or when we remove anything from our loadout, we want to call in this function. So the create weapon ID card, we're going to plug it in here at the end of creating our equipping our weapon here, and also down here, both of these functions. And then also event where we are unequipping the weapon, we want to go ahead and create this weapon ID card. It's sort of a refresh, right? Compile and save. Now it's very important that when you go ahead and do your testing, you go to your project folder, and then if you have any game saves, delete it, because we haven't really built our weapon stat manager into our game save. So our weapon stat manager does not really know what weapon we have every single time we open the game. And so it's not going to register that weapon, or it's not going to have any registry data of that weapon. So it's going to not work properly. So make sure you delete your game save before you go ahead and do your testing. And then now if I go ahead and press play, I have no weapons on me. I'm going to go pick up this AR4, and I'm going to press tab to open up our inventory, equip, and then when I equip this, I see my assault rifle card shows up. Now the magazine size is at 31, which is correct. Our level is 1, and our damage is 10. This is exactly what we're going to do. And if I press 1 to pull out my weapon, and if I start firing, you will see that the magazine is going to start dropping. And if I go ahead and do the reload, as soon as I finish the reload animation, our magazine should be set to 31. Let's go ahead and quickly take care of why our magazine did not go up. With a quick bit of research, I realized that I'm adding the notify mag size right after I call in this reload weapon function, which was not triggering. So the easiest fix is to just cut this function out, go to your event graph, find where you're doing your reload weapon function, and then right after you set the ammo used count to 0, you're going to go ahead and connect this notify mag size. So let's go ahead and compile and save, and let's test it one more time. I'm going to go ahead and delete my game save data. Let's go ahead and play. No weapons here. Grab an AR4, equip, and then plug it in. And now if I press tab, press 1 to pull out my weapon, and then start firing, magazine count is still working fine. And if I press R, I should do the reload, and it should go back to 31. There we go. So that's working really good. And my damage numbers are showing as well there. And then my level is there as well. And for the last test, I quickly added in our add XP to weapon function so that we can add a quick XP count to make sure that our progress bar and our level is working fine. When I press X, I should add some XP. In game, let me grab a weapon, equip. And then if I start pressing X after I equip the weapon, I can see the XP progress bar is going up and the level is working well. Now my magazine and my damage is set to 0 because in our BPC weapon stat manager, where we reset our current XP for weapon, I did not plug this in. Yeah, this is one of the limitations of using the array and updating things within an array. For a map, this would be so much easier if you were to use a map. But because we're going to be having multiple weapons and I want to use one component manager to handle all of it, I decided to take this route. Nonetheless, everything seems to be working fine. I see the level going up for the weapon, and the mag size and the damage size is no longer impacted by this. Alrighty, folks, thank you very much for stopping by. I know this was a little long one to take care of, and we're progressing a lot better now. Our entire player functionality is coming to an end very soon. As soon as we're done taking care of all of the functionalities of our player, we're going to start moving into the enemy category, and that's going to be pretty fun. Again, if you had enjoyed the series so far, please feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because I have more and more videos of this type coming up soon, and you don't want to miss out on it. Thank you again for stopping by, and I'll catch you all on the next one.